The
Cnidarian
Reef, a dungeon who many fear, especially new players. But I'm here to tell you that, it's not that bad. You can get through it. I believe in you. So in this video, we're going to cover all the tips, strategies, drops, loot, everything you need to know in order to do a Cnidarian Reef calmly and easily. As always, sections are time-stamped, so feel free to jump to whatever section you like, and let's get into it. Let's just make sure you're in the right place first of all when it comes to difficulty. The Cnidarian Reef has a difficulty of 5.5 and shares difficulty rating with the Crawling Depths, Woodland Labyrinths, Deadwater Docks, Puppet Master's Encore, and Parasite Chambers. To show that it's not too overbearingly difficult, in most of the background footage you're going to see, I'm doing the dungeon petless, so whether you have a pet or not, the dungeon is still accessible to you. I recommend having potions, but it is very feasible as a newer player. You'll mainly want to run this dungeon if you're either looking to max attack, def, or mana. Maybe you're looking to max all three, and or are an assassin or a sorcerer. The dungeon itself has a chance to drop from enchanted turtles found in the coral reefs, and hadopelagic jellyfish found in the deep sea abyss, which to me look like mysterious men in trench coats. It is a guaranteed drop from the world's oyster, which is a realm encounter in the coral reefs biome. And if you're really craving a Cnidarian Reef, is a Court of Oryx dungeon found within the Court of Oryx after killing Janus in Oryx's castle. Drops of interest, everybody's favorite part, include bottled Medusazoan, which is an assassin poison that you throw out and places a jellyfish which lingers, dealing pulses of damage to enemies within the radius and drops from the boss. The Cnidaria Rod, which is a sorcerer scepter, and does more damage the more targets it hits, making it very good for crowd control, and this dungeon in particular also drops from the boss. The Jellyhead Trickster skin, which even if you already have it, can still be redeemed for around 28 Crystals of Fortune, and it takes 80 to get a mystery skin, so it puts you part of the way there. And the meat and potatoes, the thing you're mostly going to be running this for, if not the white bags, is the boss drops greater defense, greater attack, and mana pots, and it drops these very reliably. Even if you're running with a lot of people, you're still likely to get all three of these. And the minions also drop potions. The gold ones drop defense, the pink ones drop vit, the blue ones drop whiz, and the green ones drop speed. Aside from that though, actual gear, you can actually get tier 5 abilities and tier 5 rings before you even enter the dungeon, depending on where you choose to farm the dungeon drop. If you choose the Deep Sea Abyss, which is what I recommend, because they just seem to drop more often, you can get tier 5 abilities and tier 5 rings from the hadopelagic jellyfish. Other than that though, once you're in the dungeon, the boss can drop tier 11 weapons, tier 11 armor, and tier 5 rings. Disclaimer, before you enter the dungeon, look at the dungeon modifiers. There's 2 or 3 very threatening modifiers. Firstly, there's minion projectile lifespan and minion projectile speed. These will make one of the future phases a lot more difficult and ups the difficulty of 5.5 to something more like 8. It's a huge difficulty increase. Just be aware of that. The other one is the spider swarm modifier. Later on, near the end of the fight, the jellyfish will all die, and they'll die at the same time. And when that happens, they all have a 15% chance of spawning high damaging spiders. So if your defense isn't very high and you're not suspecting it, all of a sudden there will be a lot of very lethal spiders that take a liking to shooting you in the face. So just be aware of that. All right, I think it's time we get into the fight. So when you start off in the Cnidarian Reef, the boss is going to take a few seconds, let you gather yourself, and then he's going to release this spew of jellyfish and start shooting these damaging daze shots. There's these bubbles all around him. You can stand on the bubbles, and your oxygen bar will fill up. That's another thing. You have an oxygen bar, by the way. So when you get in, your oxygen will start depleting, stand on the bubble columns, and it'll start to regenerate. As you can see there, he also sometimes shoots paralyzing shots. They only leave you paralyzed for about a second or half a second, but in later phases, they can be pretty annoying and pretty lethal. So the jellyfish that are circling him, the main ones you want to avoid are the pink ones. The pink ones shoot in a burst around them and deal over 100 damage. The blue ones, I don't even notice the blue ones shoot that much. You have to get really close to them to even notice it. But the blue ones do inflict you with sickness. And the green ones, again, you have to get close to them, but they also hit you with slow. But there's really no reason to ever get that close to them. And the way you get through this phase is by killing the one golden jellyfish that the boss will send out. So you kill the golden jellyfish. It might drop a defense pot, might not. And then you're on to phase 2. Phase 2, things kick up a little bit. All the enemies start shooting towards the boss all of a sudden. The boss shoots out these big, high damaging shots. And then all the minions will gather in close. The minions stop shooting during this phase. So while they're done shooting, you can sit on a bubble column and regain some oxygen. The boss has a lot going on this phase. So he's shooting, but then when the minions gather in, you can circle the boss like this. If you're playing with multiple people, just be wary of other people where other people are, because you could get caught up and take a lot of damage abruptly when you don't intend to. But as long as you run on these bubble columns, you should be fine, and you'll get a feel for the timing of when the minions are about to pop out again. But your oxygen bar will last the entirety of the time it takes for them to close back in again, allowing you to go back in pretty seamlessly and get some more oxygen. These pink lob shots, though, they do quite a bit of damage. And lots of ranged classes like wand users, staff users, bow users, they tend to sit around the outside during this phase. I really don't recommend that for any part of this fight. For this entire fight, really, you want to stay in close to the boss. And so dodge the paralyzing shots. These walls you're seeing, the white walls, they hurt, but they don't hurt a ton. What hurts a ton is these shots. Those do 175 armor piercing. So no matter what your armor is, those are going to slap the shit out of you. So just be aware of that. And you can see I'm really not regenerating any health at all because, like I said, I'm not using my pet. So the way I recommend you handle this phase is when the minions are out like this, I recommend you find a spot between them where you can dodge the boss's main attack, but also sit in a spot where you're not going to get hit by anything. And then when they close back in, go back in, circle for a little bit, like 5 seconds or so, and then pop back out. And before you pop back out, you can try to eyeball a spot where there's not going to be any enemies. And other than that, just beat the boss down. This phase takes a little while to get through because his minions block a lot of shots for him, but just burst him down. Remember, keep your oxygen high. Don't go around the outside. And with that, you should be on to phase 3. All right, boss enters phase 3 a little above half health. When this phase starts, he'll start shooting shotguns of the 175 damaging shots towards you, along with more day shots. Avoid the day shots. And this is where the paralysis starts to become a pain in the ass. If you get paralyzed when he's shooting shotguns, it can lead to a lot of damage. Just, if you're going to take damage, run away. Don't run sideways because you're going to sweep a ton of shots and you're probably going to die instantly. So just run away. I meant to mention this earlier, but you can stand on the side of the bubble columns, and here, off to the side, the day shots won't hit you, but you can still grab oxygen. Other than that, though, minions are circling around the outside again. There's more minions. That's really the only difference between third phase and the first phase when it comes to minions. So it can be a little more tricky. After you deal damage to the gold jellyfish, by the way, when you get close to them, they sometimes will shoot shotguns, and these shotguns are very lethal. And as you can see there, I got a defense pod drop from one of the golden jellies. But kill all 3. After you deal damage, a little bit of damage to one, they'll speed up, and they'll go kind of off axis like that. They'll change their trajectory. Then after you kill them, the boss will become enraged. Find a spot right below. Like here, I always go straight down. And from here, you want to stick really close to the boss. This is phase 4. Stick really close to the boss. And notice how when I'm starting to get pressured by these shots, and it's risky too because those shots deal 175 damage, so it's very precise. But this fight, it's all about the micro movements from this point on. Getting close to the bubble columns. Try to avoid getting hit by the dazing shots. And if you stay close enough, you won't have to deal with any of these shots from these enemies. It looks like I'm about to get hit, but I don't get hit. The only time where this can be a problem is when there's dungeon modifiers that increase projectile speed or projectile lifetime. Then you need to get in even closer, like about here, to avoid the projectiles. And you don't have to stand on the bubble columns constantly. You can stand off of them like this, just as long as you get back to them at some point. Like if I want to sit here to do a bunch of damage, this is fine. Just as long as you get back to them at some point, you'll be good. And so just burst them down till the next phase. I know it looks scary, but once you get used to it, it's not that bad. And you'll get used to like crossing over. That's the most challenging part, is just crossing over from the right side, waiting long enough so that you're not taking shots on this side, and crossing over to the left where you're safe and not going to take damage. And again, lots of range classes. The biggest mistake I see range classes do is they'll go to the outside, and it's a wasteland out here. You don't want to come out here. The boss is lobbing shots. They do a lot of damage, and then you have to find a way to work your way inside again. And it's painful. So if you just sit here the whole time, when the boss phase starts, I always stand in this spot right here. When the boss starts, just off to the side of the bubble column, because you're never going to get hit right away in that spot. All right, after you beat the hell out of the boss enough, on to the next phase. He's going to sound out more golden jellyfish, more normal jellyfish. You're going to need to still rotate. As long as you're anything but a melee, you can really hit most of the jellyfish quite easily. But you do end up in these situations where there's some stragglers around the outside. And if it's your first time doing a reef, or you're not very experienced with them, I recommend you just stay in this little triangle here. Stay in your little triangle because you're safe in your triangle. But if you're a little more experienced, or maybe want to speed things up a little bit, you can actually hop between the walls of shots like this, and you can just kind of pick whatever spot you want. So you kill the golden jellies. Shouldn't be too bad to get them down. Sometimes you get a straggler around the outside. Like those guys, that can be annoying, especially if you're a melee class. In these kind of situations, you will have to go towards the outside. So pick your moment. Most often, the golden jellies are going to outspeed every other kind of jellyfish. So just make sure that they're not near any pinks. If they're near 1 or 2 pinks, that's fine. But just make sure it's not near like 4 of them, like this, for example. Do not run there. That's death. It's immediate 400 damage. You don't want to be taking 400 damage in an instant. Look at that, another defense pot. This dungeon really is great for potions. Really great for potions. So let's get this last golden jelly. Before I kill the last golden jelly, actually, I like to fill up on my oxygen meter. And then you can fill up again. The boss takes about 4 or 5 seconds here. But you want to be moving before the boss starts moving, because the boss will immediately start firing paralyzing shots. He's not sitting in the middle anymore. He's not letting you beat the shit out of him. He's charging you down. He's had enough of your shit. And when this phase starts, try to run off to one side to get the boss out of the middle. And then when your oxygen starts to deplete, then run back in towards the bubble columns. You don't need to get full on your oxygen, but just get enough to be comfortable. And the minions, sometimes they'll follow him, and then other times they'll just start raining hell towards the middle. So whatever you do not want to be between minions and the middle. You either want to be between minions or outside of minions. And if you don't have Pierce, the jellyfish are going to try to take a lot of shots for the boss. It's all right. Just keep your distance. Remember, paralyzing shots, very brutal in this phase. Other than that, beat the hell out of them. Get more potion drops from the jellyfish. Got another whiz drop there. Then all the jellyfish will go stagnant. The boss will die. And boom, you have your loot. And even if it's with 6+ people, you still very reliably get mana, greater attack, and greater death. And you also get pretty solid weapons from here. And that's the fight. Congratulations, you did it. See, that wasn't so hard, was it? Okay, maybe the first few times it is, but you'll get used to it. And the loot you get from it is so worth the time investment. Even doing this solo, the loot is so worth it. Doing it with other people is even better, because it's mainly just a DPS check. Like in a nutshell, that's what this dungeon is. Just a massive DPS check. Well, that's going to do it. There's really nothing more to it. That's the dungeon. There's no secret boss, no trivia, no nothing. That's just how it is. Short and sweet, beautiful drops. I made this dungeon so early on in my guide series because of how valuable this dungeon is when it comes to potions. It's so efficient and so worth your while to grind this dungeon to get maxed on pots. All right, well, anyways, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. Let me know what dungeons you want to see next. I'll get through all of them eventually, but let me know which ones you guys want to see sooner than later. With that being said, I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.